Uh, so hello, everybody. We're so excited to be with you all today. We have some special guests and a couple things that we want to talk about today, all surrounding, the climate with our political environment. And we got judges being elected. We've got the presidential election. We've got our local issues and local elections. I don't know about you guys, but I voted already. And it was easy for me because I did the application for an absentee ballot, but man, there's lines everywhere, and I want to talk about that a little bit. But I'm also excited to talk about something else that is relatively new to rSPIRIT.online, and that's a partnership between the Minority Reporter and David McCleary and rSPIRIT. So now, 4 times a day, there is a Minority Reporter news, local news, that is aired on rSPIRIT every day, Monday through Friday. And so we're really excited about that, Dave. And thank you so much for partnering with us and allowing us to partner with you also, because we're kind of doing some cross marketing because we really do feel like it's good for both of us.
Exactly. I think, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on, and definitely, I think it's a good thing to collaborate. I'm one that I believe in collaboration, and especially when we're talking about Black media, we've got to work together. I think too often, we're this whole crab in the barrel syndrome. We want to pull each other down instead of pushing each other up. So I think that there's enough slices in the pie that we can all share and work together. So I'm definitely thrilled. You're making me do some work, though. I gotta say, I'm up at like 6 in the morning recording. But I'm getting it down to a science now, though. I can do it in less than an hour. I can put everything together. And the good piece is that my reporters, they're writing stuff every day. So when I get up in the morning, I'm like, okay, what do we have new from yesterday? So I just pull, reformat a few things, and I have a template now. And the good Rev here has given me some tutoring on using some of that program. But I've got it down. I can do it in less than an hour now, and it's not as tedious. But I'm excited. But there's a lot going on, in our city and nationally. So a lot of material.
We're not short of news. We're not short of things to talk about, right?
We sure aren't. I tell you, I don't even know where to start.
I know that, and that's the challenge. Is not whether you have anything to talk about. It's like what things do I want to talk about?
Exactly.
And so that's the challenge. But I just think this is also a great testimony on how the Black and Brown community really needs to come together.
Absolutely.
And so that's really key.
When I was starting the Minority Reporter, one of the things that I did was do some demographics in Rochester, looking at the number of percentage of Blacks and the percentage of Latinos. And when I started 14 years ago, the numbers were significant, but they were lower. Now, it's increased. You've got like 42% African Americans in the city. You've got about almost 20% Latinos. You figure if we really come together as a group, we can really make a difference. But too often, I think that the two groups, Blacks and Latinos, were pitted against each other rather than looking to say, we have a lot in common, a lot of things that we can do together to push each other. So, but I'm optimistic that those things are happening.
Well, I think that this partnership and other partnerships that we will develop, I think will be monumentally important as we go forward. And, I know the Minority Reporter, as well as rSPIRIT, is looking for opportunities to partner with whoever wants to do good. And so I appreciate you being on. And then also, we've got Dr. Djamba Robinson, who we've been partnering for years now. But I think we finally got a hold of something that really does work, and so grateful for her partnership too. She's one of those kind of people that does her research, gets her facts down, before she states her opinion. And when she finally comes to a conclusion on something, it's pretty iron tight. And so we're really, really grateful to have her dig into some of the issues, and her willingness to come and do various shows and be a guest and kind of advise us as well on how we should perceive some of the things that are happening in our community and nationwide. So just a wealth of information and very articulate in her presentation. She has been a real blessing, and I'm grateful for this partnership that we have as well. So this Jumbra, Dr.
You are
DJ.
too kind, Pastor Cooper. Too kind. And thank you
I'll
so
just tell the
much.
truth.
Tell it like it TI is.
You got that right.
So it's wonderful to be with both of you, and just to talk about some of the topics and some of the things that are affecting our Black and Brown people right here in our community and in our nation. And you know, there are so many people that are undecided as far as this national election is going. You know, some people, if you have an opinion, people think that you're supporting one candidate over another. I think that is very important, and why this forum is very important is that we be informed about who we are actually putting in charge of our communities, right? So even when it comes down to even pastoral leadership, if it comes down to even community leadership, we have to be mindful. The Bible even tells us we should know them that labor among us. And so it is our responsibility and our duty not to judge people for their personal opinions, but definitely to hold them accountable to do their jobs. When we elect someone to hold a public office, I believe that it is important that we hold them accountable for doing exactly what they promised to do, because even the Bible says that when we make a vow to God, God will collect on the vows that we made. And so we have to make sure God holds us accountable. We need to hold each other accountable at the same level. And I'm at this place, Pastor Cooper and Mr. McCleary, and I know you told me to call you Dave. I'm at this place. What do we do? What do we do? If Trump wins, what do we do? If Biden wins, what do we do? My personal opinion has been that, or not even a personal opinion, but my ask from the community has been, which one of these candidates has actually done anything for the Black and Brown community? And can we check their track records of what they have actually done for this Black and Brown community? Of course, we know that Donald Trump is not a politician, like a normal politician, quote unquote, that we would expect.
He's a politician.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Yeah, I think you're right. He's a politician, maybe just not a normal politician.
He's not a normal politician. He's not a career politician. I would say that with the definition that we say as far as career politicians, people who have been in the political field and have capitalized on political agendas. Of course, there's a whole nother, like, thank you for bringing that to the forefront, Dave. There's a whole nother political arena that is not at the forefront of whether or not it's Republican or Democrat, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to see, but what actually is going to happen? And then we know Joe Biden is a career politician. He's been in politics for 40 some odd years. And so my questioning is, what will we get if either one of them wins? Some people are like, oh, I'm just going to vote for the lesser of two evils. Why vote for evil at all? I'm just trying to figure that out. So, you know, why don't we have more Black and Brown people in delegated offices? Why aren't we voting in the primaries when the vote really counts? Because we understand, and I'm kind of rambling, so you guys stop me at any time, but when it's the electoral votes that actually elect the president.
Yeah, but see, I think that we have a bigger issue than Black and Brown people.
Okay.
I really do. I think on a presidential level, we have a much bigger issue than Black or Brown. So I'm beyond what have they done for Black and Brown people.
Okay.
Because I think the issue that we're dealing with right now is way bigger than Black and white, racist, non-racist. It's bigger than that.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that our democracy is at stake.
Mm-hmm.
And unless we protect the democracy, Black people don't, white people don't matter. We are going into a dictatorship. The second thing is, I think that's bigger than Black or brown is just humanity. You know, we can say we're the Black people, you know, but it's bigger than that. Just humanity. Before I'm Black or brown, I'm human.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about let's treating each other with just some humanity. And I think that's what's driving, driving my concern right now, because right now I feel less safe as an African American male than I have ever felt in my 58 years here on earth. And I'm concerned about my 26-year-old son and my 29-year-old daughter. I'm concerned about their just pure safety. And not only, and I'm not talking about police, I haven't gotten to that yet.
Right.
I'm just talking about on a national level, not being treated as a human being. And I'm concerned about that. Then the third thing that I'm more concerned about than Black or brown is national security. I'm very, very concerned about having a person in the White House walking around with a nuclear code that doesn't seem to be able to control himself.
Well,
so I got bigger issues on a national level than Black or white.
Rev, I gotta say, man, you raised so many issues. How much time we got? 45 minutes? That might not be enough time to address all those things. But DJ, you had raised something earlier. You mentioned about undecided. So many people are undecided. And I got to thinking, I'm like, well, are people really undecided, or are the people who are undecided about the coming election, are those people who are just maybe not engaged in in politics, or not watching the news, things like that? Because what I've seen mostly is people are pretty much dug into their position, and they're dug in with their guy, and they're not going to waver. It doesn't matter what their person does. They're dug in. And for example, I stopped in a couple months ago to visit a friend, really good friend of mine, who's highly educated. He's a computer analyst and what have you. And so I got to talk to him about politics, and it was right after the impeachment trials. And I said, hey, all this stuff that went on with the impeachment and what have you. And he goes, Dave, man, I don't even know what's going on, because I don't watch the news. I'm not engaged. And I was kind of shocked. Like, really? But I'm finding that some people are really just disengaged from it, and maybe they've found it to be so distasteful that they're just like, withdraw from the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And that's a concern. And are those individuals, whoever they are, Black, white, Latino, are they really going to go to the polls and vote, or are they just going to sit it out?
Well, that's a real concern.
Yeah.
And at this point, you got to be fairly committed if you're going to vote, because it's not easy. It's not like you just go to the place and vote. It's going to require some planning and some commitment to vote nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're right, because there are a lot of people who are disconnected, but I think that part of the reason for that disconnect is the power of social media. There used to be a time, and I'm old enough and young enough to actually know a little bit about, there used to be a time, right? And so there used to be a time where people, they were going to vote for whoever they had registered to vote for. Now, because we are in an information saturated age, there's so much grabbing for our attention, grabbing for places for our education, as far as, you can watch CNN, you can watch Fox, you can watch different places. And depending on who's endorsing that particular network is going to depend on the favor of which candidate you're going to get. There are certain places where if you turn on, I think I turned on CNN, there's certain shows that are, you can tell that they're totally against one candidate or another. And so because we are so on information overload, because we have things like social media, we have things like access to uh, public information. You can
Information, yeah.
Google information on anybody, but depending on what's on the other side of that algorithm, you'll get a certain level of information. So I think that's part of the reason why so many people have disconnected, is because they're on information overload. There's just too many options, too much information, too many things, too many factors.
People are also, you know, I find so selective in where they're getting their news, and people, you know, they're getting, you know, for the most part, they're sticking to whatever source they agree with. So I don't think that for the most part, people are looking for objectivity within the news. I saw a post again, and this was a gentleman that I know very well. He's a journalist, okay, but he's also an evangelical. And so he posted this thing that it was just a total conspiracy theory. And Rev, I could not help myself. Now, usually I don't engage, you know, in any of that, but I just put a simple post that says, listen, so-and-so, you're a journalist. I'm shocked that you would really post something like this, that you know it's a conspiracy theory and it's not based on any type of factual evidence, and you're misleading people as a journalist. And I'm not going to say that it's because of that post that I put on his page, but within a couple weeks, he had taken his Facebook page down. He said he was going to take a reprieve from Facebook. But these are the types of things that you see and you're like, well, how does that even, you know, make sense? Just because you want to discredit, you know, the other guy, you're going to post something that you know is false. I mean, so I you know, but I say that to say that people are getting what they call news from whatever source they want to get it from. You know, if they're evangelical, they're getting their news from Fox News and what have you. If they're Democrat, far left, what have you, they're getting it from MSNBC or what have you. And I don't think that people are really trying to say, or people, and maybe people are just not, you know, and I hate to say it this way, maybe people are not sophisticated enough to flush through some of the nonsense and say, well, you know what? No, that's not true. Because oftentimes I see something come through and the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking at it, I'm evaluating it, and then I'm fact checking it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's definitely conspiracy. But I think people just take things that come through their algorithm at face value and say, okay, you know.
It's on the internet, it must be true.
Thank you.
That's what they do. And I think that it points more to what the Bible has also said, and I'll bring my theological, you know, perspective here. In Paul's letter to Timothy, his second letter to Timothy, he says, be careful in these last days, because people will heap up teachers for themselves. They will be lovers of themselves. They will have itching ears, and they will reject sound doctrine. They'll reject the look for objectivity. They'll reject having, because I think we've become spiritually and philosophically lazy. Our whole culture now on this information technology has just depended completely on Google, on Yahoo, on AOL, or whatever the case may be, to get whatever information that they need. And like you said, they don't look for things to fact check or get any information anymore. They just take these things at face value. Yeah. And that's the type of microwave society that we have. Give me the answers right now, and I'm going to take whatever's on the table because I'm too lazy. And I'm just going to say it. It's a spirit of laziness that has gripped this generation to where they don't have to. I'll say this, and then I'll digress for more dialogue. I was telling the children, I do substitute teaching sometime right here in our Rochester City School District. And I had told the students, I said, listen, you better get this education before you're not able to have it anymore, before you don't get an opportunity to do it. One of the kids came up to me the other day and said, Miss Robinson, you remember when you told us that we weren't going to be able to come to school? And I said, yeah. He said, yeah, you were right. And it didn't hit me in, that it was a prophetic moment, right? You know, quote unquote, quote unquote, a prophetic moment, until just then, when I said, oh, I did warn these kids that you really have to get your education right now and be educated and learn these tools that are available to you right now, because there's coming a time where you're not going to have access to it anymore. And I think that that's where, if we were being cattle, or like the Bible says, sheep prepared for the slaughter, if we get funneled into this informational technological age, as soon as they flip a switch, we can all be cut off in a split second. Our computers are down, everything.
Right.
So I know
No,
that's going way far, way
no,
far.
but you
But
bring up a valid point though. We are on a thin string. I felt that way when the churches first went out. I felt like, wow, we're at a point now where we can't even touch our membership without the internet. You know, and matter of fact, I even said, listen, guys, if anything goes down and the internet goes down, my first move is to get to the church.
right.
You know, that and you're right. That was something that was concerning to me as well. You know, so I feel you. But the Bible also says, Matthew 24, maybe 24, it says, even the elect will be deceived.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
And so we have to be real careful about who we attach ourselves to, because time will tell the truth.
That's right.
And we have to be very, very careful. And also, we tell people when they're doing premarital counseling, don't underestimate the signs. I believe that the Holy Spirit gives us signs, and we see things, but we tend to overlook them because we want to get married, or you know, we're trying to get somewhere, and we overlook the signs that I believe that the Holy Spirit really does show us. But it seems like now we've gotten into the place where politics and religion are starting to fuse together, and that's a problem, because the church should be the church and the politics should be the politics. Now, as a person, we have to participate in politics, but it should not become. Maybe I'm not saying this properly, but it seems like we're trying to make politics and religion together, not the church. Politics and religion together. That's why you got the evangelical movement that is so politically intertwined that they're saying, well, you must not be a Christian if you vote this way. And that's dangerous. That's really, really dangerous.
So now you're getting into a whole area that, you know, I have been really looking at. You know, you're talking about evangelical Christian support for a person like Donald Trump. And, you know, it's a community that I kind of grew up in, that I think I understand. And most evangelicals will tell you, well, abortion is their number one top issue. And because of that, I support Donald Trump, because, you know, innocent life trumps everything. But, you know, I struggle within myself to figure out why such support for a person that I see as significantly flawed character-wise. And so, you know, as a Christian, where does character fall within the context of who we vote for, who our leaderships are? You know, where are all the other issues? You know, as a Black man, yes, abortion is important, but there are a whole slew of other issues that Jesus himself, you know, talked about. You know, so I'm looking at those things and trying to balance them and trying to understand just, you know, what that, you know, people have that support Christians for this man that is just, I find, so profoundly flawed.
Well, then we gotta look at what is the role of the Black pastor. because I don't have the luxury of being a one item voter. You know, I don't know that my white evangelical pastors have to quite deal with the same stuff that I as a pastor have to deal with. Now, I don't know what they deal with because I'm not one of them, but I don't believe that they have to deal with. They may choose to, but I don't believe they have to deal with social justice. I don't think they have to deal with racism. I don't know that they have to be a counselor and a drug counselor, financial counselor, this and that. I mean, all of those
a
things.
Social worker, finding housing,
yes,
and a bail bondsman.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they have that same pressure to do all of the things that a Black pastor has to deal with. So if all I have to do is worry about focusing on the spiritual growth of my church and developing an organization to do evangelism and that kind of thing, maybe I could say the most important thing and the only thing that matters to me is abortion. Now, I'll tell you this too. I've personally never met anyone who would say, I support abortion. I haven't met anybody like that. I mean, maybe there is somebody that just, is sick enough to want to kill babies. I've never met a person like that. However, what I do see is I see young girls being placed in very compromising situations and not knowing what to do. And that's where the church has to come in and be that that place where they can come and feel safe, and we can give them good counsel on things that can happen after birth. You follow me?
You're saying that we ought to be, as a church, be focusing on changing people's hearts and helping to change their lives rather than just changing laws.
There you go. Because you cannot legislate righteousness. Okay? And that's where the church has failed, because we're trying to get the Supreme Court to do something that's really our job. Because if we were effective, and if we can be effective at what we do, then we wouldn't need laws to prevent people from doing things, because righteousness would prevail. I mean, that's just,
well, I mean, you make a valid point, and that's the actual role of the church, especially the liberals, because I think I've been having an issue with the Catholic Church on a national level, on a global level, right? We just had Pope, I don't know which one are we on.
I don't know, but
John Francis or whatever his name is. What is his name?
It's Francis, right? Pope
Yeah,
Francis. I
think it's Pope Francis, who, a while back, he said, he was giving pardon to everyone who had had abortions. And then now this year, he's given pardon to same-sex unions. Now, here's the thing. Regardless of which side people are on as far as their social opinion, right, of whether it's right or not, the church has always, on the one end, we are the regime of mediation, right? We should always be the regime of mediation for
Right.
those who are suffering in our communities. However, on the same end, everything that's law in the world is not legal with God, especially if we believe the 66 books of the Bible that have been handed to us. And I'm saying this all very carefully. And so when you think about the church and how politics and religion begin to infiltrate or mixture and then begin to affect communities, we've had that happen since the onset of Christianity. The reason why I say this is because even Jesus came at a time when the Roman government and the Roman officials were trying to take over Jewish territories. for political and economic gain. And this is where we have to really look at how the church and where the church stands, because there are certain things such as 501c3 nonprofit statuses that prevent us from being able to take a stand against things that we don't necessarily believe in unless it's already written in our approved bylaws. And so we have to really, so for people to get that tax breaks, and I'm just going to say I've been living long enough to see that there was a generation of pastors who took on the 501c3 status, some, not all, and just to get those tax breaks on those Cadillacs and get those tax breaks on those cars and get those write-offs. And then now we find ourselves in a compromising position that if you are a 501c3, you now have to abide by what the government says that, or how you can run your organization, not by how God says that you can run your organization. And so when we ask, where does the Black church stand, especially in areas of political indifference, we have to really, now we have to say, first of all, I think that there's something in the laws that says that a pastor cannot publicly endorse any particular candidate from their pulpit.
That's right.
And so it silences us from talking about the issues that really matter. And so now we have to refer back to the number one belief system that has created all of this political dilemma. Because if you remember, here in this nation, with the civil rights movement, the red coats and the blue coats, the main what initiated that fight was whether or not the Bible was true, as far as whether or not someone else could own slaves. And the one part of the Bible, it says slaves obey your masters, and another part of the Bible, it says that no master should be over you except for the Lord Christ Jesus. And so it started a whole war. Politics and religion. I digress. I'm gonna let you jump in because I see you.
No, you mentioned something about Jesus and I got to thinking that the Jews back in those days, they actually expected his followers, whereas Christians expected Jesus to overthrow the Roman government. That was right. The expectation. But we all know he didn't do that. So he came for a whole different purpose. So it's back to this whole argument about, the church and politics, how involved we should, really be. But it sounds like you're saying, and that might be a revolutionary thought that, maybe some of our churches need to begin to look at our 501c3 status. And maybe we ought to just start paying taxes like any other organization so that we can address situations that we need to address.
Exactly. I believe that the Black church, and when we look at our history, and once again, I can only go as far back as maybe 10 or 20 years before I was born. When we look at the 50s, the 60s, and we see where after Blacks were freed or given their rights or whatever the case may be, whatever that means to us now, because we're still struggling. But when there was a time where there was a Black Wall Street, there was a time when the Black church was the hub of information, not the internet, that the Black church was the place where families gathered, where the Black church was the place where testimony service was therapeutic. So you didn't have to go see a counselor or go get Ritalin or go get something for your children. We're disciplined, where morals were actually taught for our communities. And so now, since that has been removed because of laws, right? Law says that you cannot discipline your children, otherwise they're going to call the CPS. Law says that you have to go and and take these other drugs because you have a psychotic something going on with you. No, it takes prayer and supplication. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that the Black church has always been the hub for crisis intervention in the Black communities.
Right.
And so when we gave up that power for grants and free money and to be able to qualify for certain things, the church in Acts didn't need a grant. Everyone brought what they had to the table, and they had proper management and proper marketing, and they had become so powerful. And I'm going to add to what you were saying, Dave, that Jesus did not overthrow the government in the way that they expected him to. But after he died and was resurrected according to our belief, right? When he came back, he had started a movement that was so powerful that Constantine himself had to adopt Christianity as the national religion so that he could control it, because they couldn't do anything with it economically. They couldn't do anything with it. And so if we would just get back to that, and I believe that that's what's being pushed here. And I proposed, and I'm going to digress, I proposed when I was preaching over at Jeffrey Melvin's church to the congregation, that stop looking at Christ as a person and begin to look at Christ as a movement. Mm-hmm. He says, have the mind of Christ, which means it's a mind of a movement that has sustained itself throughout generations. So I'm going to go ahead. Come on, Pastor Cooper or Mr. Dave.
I wanted to go back to something that Dave said about, and I know people are going to be like looking at me cross-eyed when I say this, but when it comes to the church paying taxes, what I actually think is that we shouldn't be receiving government money. That's where I really think the issue is. The government should not be putting money into churches. We should run our churches off of tithe and offering, and just do it that way, because it does put us in a position where we're almost entrepreneurs in a way, with the way we have to run the church. So I think another way to cut that is we shouldn't need a 501(c) because we shouldn't be taking government money. The church should be run by the people. Like to say, by the people and for the people, but it should be run by the people, and we should not be participating in any government subsidies and all those kind of things. That where we're not beholden to the king. We're running our church, and we can run our churches based on righteousness, and the people hold the church accountable for being good stewards.
Right.
That's another way.
Government has kind of locked the church in. So what the government says is, as a 501(c)(3) organization, your parishioners who pay their tithes and their offerings can now, when they file their taxes, can now get a tax deduction from that. So hence they pay less taxes. So,
but like I don't see the need for any of that. You're giving it to the church post taxes. Maybe it just shouldn't be a write-off. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I hear you. I hear it.
I'm just saying. I guess what I'm getting at is I'm trying to tear away the church and government so that the government doesn't tell me what to do, and I'm not telling the government what to do either. I shouldn't owe the government anything. And I should be able to preach the gospel as I feel that it should be preached. And if that means the church pays taxes, if that's the only way to do it, then let it be, But again, if the church is paying taxes, then I'm participating in the political process, and then I got to hold the government responsible for doing something with with the church's tax dollars. And all I'm saying is, if we tear those two apart, then we can do what we have to do with the monies and the resources that we have. And the government can do what it has to do with the government, with the resources and all that. I'm just saying, and I'm not saying that we should do this. I'm brainstorming because you brought up a real valid point.
Of course. But one thing I will add to that is that the political process got its process from the church.
From the Bible, absolutely.
And so
really, it is the source of all wisdom.
That's right.
So I spent 32 years in corporate America, and I will tell you that I got to the point where I was really doing all I could do to run my organization based on biblical principles, and it worked.
Yeah, it worked.
I didn't say it was biblical principles. I just, just used it, but it worked. You know,
Right.
and how to deal with people, how to motivate people, how to encourage people, even, you know, giving them bad news and tough news and holding people accountable. And you know, I use biblical principles to do that, treating people humanely. But I think that's a real issue. So let me ask this question.
Sure.
Okay, let's say, for instance, Biden wins the election. What do we do? It's January. When is the inauguration? January the 4th?
20th, I think. I think it's the 20th, around the
The
20th.
20th. Okay, what do we do on the 21st? Whatever the day is, what do we do the next day?
Dave, I'm gonna let you take that one.
You know what? I'm gonna add to that. You know, I think if Biden wins, what do we do if Donald Trump wins?
Well, I'm going to ask that question too.
If whoever wins, we need to be doing the same thing. We need to be advocating for ourselves, and we need to have an agenda, you know, that we want to hold our elected officials to. You know, as a Black community, there's got to be some issues that we have that we want to hold whoever's elected office, because our issues are not really being addressed. You know, Donald Trump likes to say, "Oh, I've done more for the Black community than anybody." No, what happens is this whole trickle down thing. So, you know, white unemployment drops down to 3%. So guess what? Everybody else's unemployment, you know, as a trickle down, but white unemployment is 5%. Guess what? Black unemployment is 12%.
Right.
You know, so we can never really close that gap. So I think that we have to have an agenda outside of who is elected, and whoever gets elected, we hold them accountable. Now, with that said, you know, I think that there are a whole slew of issues, you know, around the election. You know, I think what happens if Biden wins and Donald Trump actually says, "Well, I'm contesting this and I'm not leaving," which I feel like there is good reason to believe that he would do that. Then what do we do as a Black community or as citizens in general? You know, what's going to happen? And are our elected officials going to step in and say, "Oh no, we have a democracy"? Because, you know, I don't see where people are actually willing to hold this man accountable to certain things. Now, and I'm looking at that in light of the standards that we held, and I'm going to say we very broadly, held Barack Obama to. You know, it appears that the very things that, and I'm going to say people were concerned that Obama was going to do, that he was going to raise the deficits, he was going to destroy the Constitution, he was going to destroy our institutions, and he was going to lower our ratings in the world. And now we have a man in office who, in my opinion, in an opinion that I don't share too often, is actually doing those things. The same people are cheering him on and are saying rah, rah, rah. Whereas, you know, the same individuals, when Obama was in office, you know, they were upset because he wore a brown suit. You know, so, you know, those are, and listen, I say that as a person who voted for George Bush twice and who turned around and voted for Barack Obama, you know, because I've always tried, because of the work that I do and because of who I am personally, to not look at politics in terms of Democrat and Republican, but look at who's best to fit that particular job, who I think is actually the best candidate. And sometimes I think that gets lost somewhere because we have all just retreated to our corners, and that's my guy. So I don't care what he says. I don't care what he does. I'm supporting him. He's right. Well, you know, as Christians, we also got to be able to be a prophetic voice and call our elected officials to speak truth to power.
That's right.
And you know what has happened with that?
Okay.
It got
So-
watered down with the 501c3 status.
Well, the jump, I know you might jump all over me for what I'm about to say, but that's
Go right
okay,
ahead and say
because
it.
you always have your facts right, and sometimes I can move on emotion sometimes. But here, I think that if Biden wins or if Trump wins, our strategies need to be different. And the reason I say that is because one of the things that scares me about Trump is that at this point, we have one person running the free world, running the nation, and that's Donald Trump. Nobody seems to be able to influence him or talk to him or anything. He just does whatever he wants to do. He did the whole Republican convention without an agenda. Whatever he says today, then that's what we're going to do. And nobody seems to have any influence on him. So our ability to negotiate with him or even hold him accountable, I don't think that's possible if Trump wins again. Coupled with the fact that he won't be able to run again unless he does something different, which he can, or which he might, or try. But holding him accountable, I don't believe is going to work. And so therefore, if he does win, then I think that we need to kind of understand, okay, we really are living in a racist society, and we got to come to grips with that. And I think that in the short term, we need to start governing ourselves better. In other words, I'm saying we got to really look internally and start doing some things in our own community, in our own homes, because we got a lot of issues that we need to do. We say Black Lives Matters. We really need to drive that home in our own communities, that Black Lives Matters. Now, I think that's what we're going to have to do, and make sure that we're electing good people moving forward into various assignments in government positions. If Biden wins, then I think that we really need to focus on our own community, just like I mentioned before, but we also need to have a very strong coalition that is able to talk to Biden, because I believe he will listen if we send the right people to him. And so I think those are we need to break it out differently, but I have very little confidence that we can convince Trump to do or not to do anything. And that's why I say I think the strategies, maybe it's just we're adding more strategy if Biden gets in, which I think is good. But by the same token of Trump, I just don't think we have there ain't nothing.
The agenda stays the same, but the strategy needs to be different depending on.
Yeah, because he's always the smartest person in the room. So we got to get the Senate, we got to get the House to hold him accountable. Aside from that, he's just going to run the tables. He's going to run the table. Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and those, oligarchs in the Senate and the House and them kind of places, man. For the life of me, I don't understand why or how they're willing, to sacrifice democracy for this guy.
Yeah, well, I because of course, I'm always considering politics, and I have to look at a person like John McCain. Let me bring him up in this whole situation, because he's a person that you can respect, whether you agree with his politics or not. You can respect him because he went to his grave saying, "Hey, listen. These are the things these are the issues and these are the things that I believe in. And it doesn't matter if it's my guy or my party, if they're doing things outside of those principles that I have, then I'm going to call them out on that because I'm a man of principle. And I think that's what has happened. So then you mentioned Lindsey Graham, a man that I have really, lost respect for, because you can't really take his word for anything. So here, and I have no problem with conservative justices on the Supreme Court or this nominee that they have. But what I have a problem with is you have a man like Lindsey Graham who goes when Obama, 10 months before the election, wanted to appoint someone. He says, well, time out now. I'm not going to play politics. And we need to wait till the next president gets in. We're too close to the election. And if this had happened with my guy, I would be saying the same thing. You mark my word. Well, guess what? It just happened with his guy, even closer. I mean, 6
That's right.
weeks before the election, and he has totally flip-flopped and feels no consequence for that. And nobody is saying, hey, whatever happened to integrity? That's the thing. What happened to integrity and those types of issues? And we've lost that.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, and this is to your point, Pastor Cooper, one of the things that as you were talking, and you were talking about how no one is able to deal with Trump, no one's able to get through to him. The first thing that came to my mind biblically was Pharaoh. Pharaoh, the Bible even says that even those who we consider wicked do God's bidding unaware. And so maybe this is just the motivation that we need to get out of our places of complacency, to get out of our places of hypocrisy for the Black church, the Black community. And actually, this may be the fire that we need up under our butts to actually get back to that place to where we're not accepting the status quo. We're not accepting the government handouts. We don't want to have any parts of that. That's why the children of Israel left Egypt, right? However, we have to have a strategy. Otherwise, we'll be in the wilderness for 40 years, going around the same conversations, the same tables, the same meetings, the same come-togethers, the same kumbayas, the same crabs in the barrel, and never get anything done. And so we have to, or wondering who's going to be in charge, because that's one of the big things. I know we only got a little time left, but we'll pick this up next time, right? So we think about no one was able to get through to Pharaoh. Moses even tried to reason with Pharaoh and could not. However, it did have its purpose. And so what my closing argument, I guess, is that as we progress moving forward, regardless of who wins, right? Because God is in control of it all. God was the one that was able to crush Pharaoh and drown him in the Red Sea, right? So whatever we decide to do, the truth will prevail, no matter who wins. I will say this, and people have accused me of being a Trump supporter, but since the war on drugs, which is one of the things that has happened, one of the traumatic instances that has happened in my era, when drugs infiltrated our families and broke down the Black family dynamic, since that time, I have seen more people be put on subsidies, and it seems like the churches follow suit. That the subsidized, and that's kind of what broke down, because if you're depending on the tithes and offerings to sustain the church, if the majority of your members are limited by subsidies, they have a limitation as to what they can actually give to the church for it to be able to sustain. So the way that you take out a church is you take out its people. And so because the churches in the city are so saturated with government programming and government subsidies and limitations, and I say that because as a single mom raising a child, after you make over $1,200 for a family of two, after you make over $1,200, I think it's $1,198. As soon as you make $1,200, you're no longer qualified for any of those subsidies. So that means if you have a job making $15 an hour, you have to spend every dime to maintain your family. What do I have left to give to the church? So these are some of the things that we have to look at. And one of my fears that has made me not a blind Democratic voter, but someone who actually steps back and research, are we going to get more of the same? Are we going to get more of the same government subsidies? Are we going to get more of that spoon feeding to our community? Well, I don't want to be in the wilderness going around the same mountain for 40 years. So, regardless, and this is just to come together in unison with your point, Pastor Cooper, and to you, Dave, as well. We have the same goal of liberation, but because of the way our society is now structured, because of the invisible, a new invisible enemy. For my era, it was drugs, it was crack, it infiltrated the church, it put lots of families, broke them up. Right now, it's GTA, which is Grand Theft Auto, PlayStation, Xbox, that is breaking down the family. It is our cell phones and those apps that is keeping us from talking to each other at the dinner table to even find out what's going on with our kids and what they're listening to and what they're so there's another invisible enemy that we now have to deal with that has infiltrated us, and the church is missing it. We're missing it. We have to change our strategy. We have to unplug from a lot of these things that have been put in front of the church and really refocus on the plan of God, regardless of who wins. Mm-hmm. We have to have a plan. So I agree with you on that, and I digress.
And I got to say, I agree wholeheartedly with everything you just laid out. I think that we're building a generation of these millennials that they have no coping skills. For one, they can't deal with any issues. They feel entitled to things. I think we've done them a disservice in that manner. And so it's also a matter of, you talk about subsidies, giving people a hand up rather than just a hand out. So I definitely agree with you want to call it conservative principles, you talk about welfare and all these things that have destroyed our families. One of the reasons why, as an African-American, you can't just vote party line. You've got to vote along, for the issues and the things that are important. So yes. There's a whole lot of things that we really do need to consider. Yes. Absolutely.
Pastor Cooper, you going to take us on out?
Well, yeah, I think this has been really, really good conversation. I would say this is very much a start of the continuation of the conversation that we need to continue to have. Mm-hmm. And I think it's timely that we are having it now, because one thing is for sure, somebody's going to be the president. And we can say, well, whether it's Trump or Biden, how much of an effect will that have on my house?
Right.
But I think that we're really seeing the effects of leadership and how important leadership is in our government, in our churches, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, right. On our jobs. We're seeing the effects of leadership and how leadership can really impact our lives. And so, now is a good time because like I said, we're going to have to live one way or another.
That's right.
We're going to have to live. And so we really need to start talking about that, because there is nothing, as far as I see it, Biden has a very good chance of winning. But I also see it where Trump has a very good chance of winning. So it could, at this moment, it could go either way. I mean,
what if it's a tie? What are we gonna do if it's a tie?
Well, I think there is a process.
They're gonna duke it out. Can we put them in a boxing ring and
see who wins?
Trump is gonna declare victory. I mean, that's.
We should put them in both of them. They over 76. We should put both of them on some boxing gloves and see who can push the other one down first.
I want to see that fight. I want to see that.
That would be a hot mess.
It would be so entertaining. Whatever news station puts that on, they will have the most ratings.
That would have to go on I think it's World Star or something like that.
World Star. I would invest in World Star.
That's right. Do not put it in the Minority Reporter, okay? And we are not putting it on rSPIRIT.online. No way. That would be just the most ridiculous thing I ever seen.
Oh man, that would be so entertaining.
Yeah. That's a good one for Saturday Night Live, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. And we just want to encourage folks, listen, rSPIRIT.online is bringing you unfiltered information for our community here in the Rochester, Syracuse, and Buffalo area. And also, Dave, if you can tell them about Minority Reporter, how they can get it, where they can get it, what's in it, that would be great.
Yeah, so the Minority Reporter, we've been publishing here in Rochester for the last 14 years. We are published weekly on Thursdays, and hard copies are distributed throughout the city at various locations. You can go to our website at minorityreporter.net for more information, for articles, and it's updated daily. So we have news all the time, local, some national news, but a lot of important information that we think is relevant to the Black community here in Rochester.
Yeah, so you want to definitely pick that up. And also, this Jamba Robinson, you have some programs that you're running too.
Yes, actually, I'm a part of the Rock Race Commission, and we're a part of the business development team. Actually, we are having a community forum for minority women business enterprises, how to get more information on how we can start doing more procurement for Black and minority businesses to get a chance to bid on some of these government contracts that are actually coming through and job opportunities, workforce opportunities, and economic development. That's going to be happening Wednesday, which is the Wednesday the 28th. And if you go to my website, or you can go to actually their website, but if you go to my website to just talk to me, it's going to be drdjrobinson.com. But if you also would like to register for that conversation, you can go to Rock Race, ROCRASE.com/events and register online to be a part of that conversation. So that's what we got coming up this week.
Awesome, awesome. A lot is happening. And then in between all of those other things, I want you to tune in to
rSPIRIT.online.
So God bless you, everybody. Thank you so much, Dave McCleary, for being a part of this conversation.
My pleasure.
Jamba, it's always a pleasure. And we look forward to the next Black Talk and everything else that's going on. So thanks again, everybody.
All right.